Now we'll look at some advanced features of the tabular model. We're going to look first at a review of DAX for measures. DAX is the data analysis expression language used in the tabular model for analysis services. This language contains hundreds of functions to build measures in the model. Remember, you want to embed these calculations in the model to centralize the business logic for end users and reporting tools. An understanding of the row versus table context is important. DAX functions like sum, count, or distinct count are measure calculations used in a table or filter context, whereas related or string functions are used in a row context. Once you get the basic measures like total sales and total cost for a particular table, usually a fact table, you can then use time intelligence to get additional analytical measures to make your model more fluid and more usable. These include a year-to-date function to calculate the total sales up to the date displayed from the date dimension. Being able to slice and dice these measures makes your end users not have to embed certain calculations in their reporting tools. The main purpose of measures is to centralize these calculations that otherwise would have to be duplicated in reports. Also, the intelligence of BI is its ability through relationships to slice and dice by dimension attributes and hierarchies. There is a difference while using DAX in row and table contexts. The row calculation involves one row but is processed for all rows. This example is gross profit for a line item in sales. The measures for a tabular model are an aggregate of one or more rows and require some function to aggregate the values returned. It can be on the row calculated column like gross profit or a regular column of the table. Here you see the example of a gross profit margin, which is using the gross profit calculated column. The DAX language is used in the tabular model in analysis services, Power Pivot, as well as Power BI. So, learning this language has its benefits for all Microsoft Business Intelligence applications, and even the ones that are coming in the future or the present. The row calculation involves this row and is processed for all rows. So each of these different models or applications can perform the same DAX calculations. Let's look at a demonstration of some of the more advanced features of the tabular model. First, we'll start with the DAX language, and we're going to launch SQL Server Data Tools. We're launching it from an icon, but you can launch it from Start Program Files. We're going to open up a previously created project that has a lot of these measures and calculations built. Once we have that open, we should see the tabular model in the grid form, and then we can also go see the relationship form. So we'll open up the model, and we'll see we're in the grid view, and there's also the diagram view. Now, the reason we'll go to the diagram view is to show that we have internet sales fact as well as reseller sales fact. So we have a set of conformed dimensions, product, date, and sales territory that are related to two different fact tables. That means we could combine some of the measures in these fact tables to do totals between those conformed dimensions. Let's go back to the grid view, and if we notice in internet sales, as we scroll to the right, we already have the gross profit column, which is a row context, and we also have gross profit margin, which is more the table or filter context. But if we go to reseller sales and scroll to the right, we'll see that that has not been created yet. So let's go ahead and review that again, and we'll create gross profit for reseller sales. We'll start with an equal sign, and again, we're doing a calculated column, which is row context. And we're going to grab the sales amount minus the total product cost. That gives us the gross profit per line item. We can right click on that column, rename, and call it gross profit. Now we actually have a gross profit column in both our internet sales as well as our reseller sales. You'll see that it's been calculated twice, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the one we just added, and we'll just use the previously created one. I was using that to show an example of row context. So once we have the row context for gross profit, we can now use that in more of a table context. So I'll click below reseller sales, and I'll start a new calculation. We'll call it reseller gross profit margin. We need a semicolon and an equal sign. And then we could do a sum of that gross profit in the row level. And then we could close the sum and then divide that by the reseller sales sum. So I'll type sum open and look at the column sales amount. Close that parentheses and hit enter, and now I have a gross profit margin. I'm going to look at the properties because I want to change that from just a general display to a percentage. And that gives me more context to it. Now, what we see in this display is the gross profit margin for reseller sales throughout all the rows in this table. Now, that might go up and down depending on what we slice and dice by. But let's do something else now, and we're going to go to the date dimension. Because we have internet sales and gross and reseller sales, we want to create a new measure called total sales. Now, when you create measures, it's not dependent on what tab or table you're in. It depends on what you reference in your calculation. So here, I'm going to go grab from the internet sales measure. And you'll notice it just changes the table name and column name to just the column name. The tabular model recognizes that that measure is unique throughout the whole model. I'm going to then add a plus sign to sum and find the reseller sales. Now we have a total sales between both fact tables. I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to change the general format to a currency. Now we have a formatted value, and I'm going to go to the module menu choice and analyze in Excel. We'll use the current window and no role, and we should get a client tool that's going to display those for us. And if you notice, under the date now we have a total sales, but under internet sales we have internet sales, and reseller sales we have reseller sales. So now we have a summation of both internet and reseller sales. I'm going to minimize that, and we can do the same thing for total product cost. I'm going to grab the internet total product cost, which we might not have. So what we might need to do is do a sum of internet sales, which is the table, and total product cost. So now we have a total product cost, which is a sum of the internet sales plus a sum of reseller sales and its total product cost. Once we get that, we tab out, close our parentheses and hit enter. Now we have the total product cost throughout all of the fact tables. I'll go to properties again, grab my measure, properties, change the format to currency. Now you can see we can combine these in one area and display them for the whole tabular module. If we wanted, we could go further and calculate our gross profit as well as calculate a gross profit margin. Remember, what we're doing in a measure is a table or filter context, whereas when we go to a column, we're looking more of row context. That's more of the advanced items in DAX, and we'll learn a little bit more once we start looking at the time intelligence.